Hello, welcome back. As a reminder, my name is Ray. I use they, them pronouns or any neopronouns, and I'm also a medical student. I originally recorded this video as one long video and decided to break it up. So, without further ado, here is the second part. So now I've talked about sex, I also wanted to talk about gender and how sex is different from gender. Sex is determined in a variety of ways, as I'm sure most of us are familiar with. Sex is usually assigned at birth. In most countries, how it is done, and in most instances, baby is born, doctor looks at the genitals of the baby, and then assigns a sex. And in most countries, there's only two options. There's male and female. Obviously, as we have learned, there are more types of sexes than just two, and of course there's also more than two genders, so that can be problematic. Sometimes sex is determined by the 23rd pair of chromosomes, what's called the sex chromosomes. So you assign the sex based on whether a person has XX chromosomes or XY. Either way, really not a good way to do it because there are more than two options for sex. And also, using the terms male and female to talk about sex is also not great because those are also gender terms. So as a simple example, if, for instance, we were talking about a man, you might call a man a male. You might do that. They could be comfortable with that, and that would make sense, right? We refer to men as males, but you would not call a man a female, right? No matter what their chromosomes are, if that is a man who prefers to be referred to as a man, even if he has XX chromosomes, you should only call him a man or a male, if he's okay with those terms, right? Or in my case, I'm non-binary. Some people have told me, well, your gender is one thing, but biologically you're either male or female. That's not true. Biologically, I am non-binary because that is how I identify. If that is my gender identity, then everything about me is part of me being non-binary because that is how I exist. And also, I think our brain is also, it functions to show who we are and how we are, and so that is also part of my biology. So if part of my identity is kind of part of the process of what's going on in my brain, right, then biologically, yes, how I'm thinking and how I choose to identify is part of me. Which is not to say that gender identity is some kind of disordered thinking. That is also not true. That also probably will need a content warning. I'll put that in the description. Bottom line is, there are more than two options for sex. Using gender terms to describe sex is wrong because it can be triggering of dysphoria and other issues for people, and it's just plain inaccurate, scientifically, biologically, or otherwise. So, if sex is usually determined by chromosomes or genitals, although, to me it seems kind of arbitrary. It's an arbitrary assignment, but we do have it in our language, which is why we talk about it. But if that's what sex is, well then what is gender? Well, gender is an identity. It's what people choose to identify no matter what your body parts are, or hormones, or chromosomes, right? It's self-determined. So there's a few options. Well, there's a lot of options for gender, but a couple of terms which would be helpful to know. A lot of people, most people I would argue, identify as cisgender. And what cisgender means is your gender identity matches the sex you were assigned at birth. So for instance, if you were assigned female at birth, because of how your genitals were, because of the chromosomes you had, and you identify as a woman for your gender, then you are cisgender. Transgender refers to anybody whose gender identity does not match the sex they were assigned at birth. And a good example of how sex and gender can differ as well is intersex folks, looking again at that community. Intersex is another type of sex you could be, and in some countries it is legally recognized as an option for your sex marker on your legal documentation. And some intersex folks are cisgender and some are transgender. And within transgender identities as well, that's more of an umbrella term, right? So some folks may have more specific labels that they want to use. So for instance, I identify as transgender. I use kind of the umbrella version of that. But more specifically, I'm non-binary, meaning I identify neither as a man or a woman. I'm something else. I don't really have anything more specific besides I am Ray and not a man or a woman. And so some intersex folks may be transgender, especially if they were assigned within a binary sex that doesn't fit really who they are and what their body is like. And then their gender identity may be different from that assigned sex. And I also know some intersex folks who do just use intersex to describe their sex and gender because, frankly, they're all social constructs, meaning they're determined and accepted by a society, and therefore people believe it's true, but it's really all quite arbitrary. However you want to identify, it shouldn't actually really matter, and certainly nobody should be forced into a box that doesn't match how they feel. That's really what I'm trying to get at. And from a scientific perspective as well, it's very easy actually just to talk about what you really mean to say. If somebody says to me, this is a female, well, that leads me to a lot of questions. When you say, this is a female, well, I still don't know what are their chromosomes, what are their hormones, what is their body like, what are their healthcare needs, what kind of exams do they need, because that term, female, tells me nothing about what their needs are, what their body is like, which from a doctor's perspective is what I really need to know. So instead, what I prefer to do and what is the better practice to do is just talk about the parts that you need to know about. Do I need to do a pelvic exam for certain types of organs? Do I need to do a blood test for certain types of hormones? That's what I'm really looking for, and I don't need to gender that to find out and make the appropriate prescriptions and have appropriate conversations with my patients, right? I think everybody is probably a bit happier and more at ease that way. So, checking my notes. Let's see. Well, actually, I think I just covered everything. So, now that I've gone on my rant, which is, oh my god, almost 19 minutes, thank you so much for listening. That may have been confusing, so I'm going to review this video. If you think I forgot something, or if you think I got something wrong, please, if you can, leave a comment. I will do my best to correct it, either in a future video or in the comments. If you think I forgot a content warning in the description, please let me know, and I will definitely add that ASAP. And if there's something you want me to cover in a future video, also let me know. Basically, I love to hear from y'all. And thanks! I hope you all have a great day or week or whatever the next time I do another video.